In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Why are we here? What is here and who are we? Well, I can't answer that in regards to our universe. Maybe I can for the dotaverse. Reality is only our subjective interpretation of the objective truth. So really, anything you believe in is real, and everything you don't believe in is also real somewhere. You see, reality and the multiverse used to be a tightly woven fabric, a whole piece of reality with different universe within the mesh. It was made by the loom, which, much to the distress of Skitsker the Weaver, meant that the original job of creation was already done. His job was only to maintain what was already made. He had been delegated a small patch of reality to weave, and in secret he tinkered and altered it to his own innovative ideas. This upset the Guardians, and so they cut off his part of reality and rewrote it without him in it. This was meant as punishment, but much to Skitsker's delight, this now meant he was free to create the reality as he had envisioned it. This reality, woven from the threads of conflict, would become the host of the new multiverse we know as the Dotaverse. Or at least that's how I interpret it. The newly woven reality was now created, but it was rather empty. So, how did this world take its form? Why, of all the worlds in creation, has this one its strange properties, its diverse and motley collection of creatures, cultures, and lore? The answer, one whispers, lies with the Titans. Okay, once again, here comes another theory of mine, and I will show you my evidence so you can decide for yourself, but I actually think Elder Titan was the one who created everything. As in everything, including the shattering of the primordial mind. I might be wrong, and I'm very interested to hear your thoughts, but before that, please hear me out with an open mind. To show you what I have realized, we must compare Arc Warden's and Elder Titan's backstories. So what we know about Arc Warden is that he is a fragment of the primordial mind. The primordial mind existed before even the beginning itself, only, in my understanding, predated by Weaver. It was an infinite, unified presence. But as the universe was created, probably similarly to as in our world through the Big Bang, the primordial mind was fragmented or shattered, and so we now had Cosmos and a bunch of shards from this awesome being. Arc Warden was one of these shards, as well as the Dire and the Radiant. Arc Warden would later imprison the Ancients and send them out in space, and I will come back to this, but for now, all you need to know is that Arc Warden's ultimate goal is to unite all the primordial fragments, including himself and the Ancients, back into a whole, unified, primordial mind. But who shattered the primordial mind in the first place? Elder Titan, similarly to Arc Warden, also wants to reach unity and symmetry and bring together what he once broke. We know that Elder Titan created our world and the fundamental laws of the universe when he accidentally caused the schism, an event that divided the world. I believe that the schism is in fact the same event that shattered the primordial mind, as both events happened as the universe came into existence. Now, when the schism created the fundamental laws of the universe, in the Dotaverse, they came in the form of actual sentient beings. And the writing is beautiful, because it seems to be both a homage to the creation in Genesis and many pagan faiths. The first fundamental force was Chaos Knight, the embodiment of darkness and chaos. The second, at least I think, is Keeper of the Light, who is actually not just a light fundamental, but also order. In Genesis, there is first darkness and then light, and in, for example, Greek myth, there is first chaos and then order. And like day and night chase each other endlessly, so does Chaos Knight and Keeper of the Light. Keeper also created the suns in the universe. The last two fundamentals are Enigma, who is gravity, and Io, who is a bit difficult to pinpoint exactly what he represents. If Enigma is mass and space, then Io must be everything in between. According to his bio, he is everything that binds existence together. According to Arc Warden, he is in all things. He could also be magneticism, or electromagneticism, but I think that would be weird, as I feel that belongs to the Keeper of the Light. He could be the essence of life, of consciousness, or free will. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. Let me know in the comments if you have a good, coherent description of what he is. But anyways, the fundamentals sprung out from the schism at the same time as the primordial mind shattered, and the cosmos soon turned to a war zone. The Dire and the Radiant, the two opposite ancients, who were two of the bigger parts of the primordial mind, were so conflicted in nature that they battled endlessly. The collateral damage seemed only to get worse to the point where they became a threat to the cosmos itself, and so a third fragment of the primordial mind, Arc Warden, imprisoned them. He did this by putting them in a sphere, sealing their conflict within, and sent them into space, drifting through the darkness. So it did for eons, until one day it was caught in the orbit of a certain planet. So now, the reality has been woven and the universe created, but the planet, which I will from here on refer to as Earth, of which the Dota history takes place on, was still in its infancy, still cooling. It wasn't until the prison of the ancients caught its orbit that life started to spring forth, and with it, tales of how it came to be. There's 3 Dota gods that I've chosen to group together as the creators of the world. Whether they actually did, or it's just stories, is up for you to decide, but regardless, it's a cool parallel to Genesis of the Old Testament and the myths of the Antiquity. There's the Omniscience who created the earth, Maelron who created the oceans, and Verodicea who created the life inhabiting it. The Omniscience, also known as the All-Seeing One, claims to have formed the earth around itself in order to stay hidden from the dangers of space. It will later be worshipped as a god, and I will come back to the faith. But for now, all you need to know is that in regards to the genesis of the Dota world and Greco-Roman parallels, he is the god of the mineral part of the world, all rocks, stones, mountains, cliffs, and caves. Earthshaker, Earth Spirit, and Tiny are also connected to the spirit of the earth, but if they even are, they are lesser deities compared to the Omniscience. Maelron the Tentacular is presently worshipped by the Leviathans, who you might recognize in Tidehunter. Maelron, at least in my mind, looks a lot like Cthulhu, a big boy with tentacles. He resides in the ocean depths, perhaps within a whirlpool. While the Leviathans worship him, other Maranths, such as the Sundering, who inhabit the sunken cities, despise him. Apparently, he cracked the shell of the world, which I interpret as him creating the oceans and seas. And thus, the world was ready for life. Verodicea, the goddess of the woods, gave her own life in order to cover the world with green during a single season. Maybe, in order to create life, you must sacrifice your own very life force, bit by bit, seed by seed. But as she was about to die, she had one last seed left. Her last action was to swallow the seed, and dead she fell, fertilizing the ground throughout the coming winter. From the seed she swallowed, Furion the nature's prophet sprung. To our knowledge, he is the only one who knows about the goddess, likely because she died before there was any life intelligent enough to remember her, other than Furion. By the way, did you know Furion was first named Tekoya? In Dota 1 he was named Furion, so they had to change his name in Dota 2 to avoid copyright issues. But they later removed this name, Tekoya, and thank God for that. And since his name is still Furion in the game files, and most people call him that, I'm sorry nerds, but that is his name. His name is not Tekoya. Other protectors and spirits of nature is Strange Protector, Lone Druid, Enchantress, and Leshrac. The latter two are the most interesting, because they are the two opposite deities of the same coin, that is nature. Lesh is a depressed philosopher pondering the meaning of life and creation, and he has pretty much concluded that the truth of reality is evil. Where he sees the macabre darkness of nature, Enchantress, on the other hand, only sees beauty and purity. Leshrac is too nihilistic, while Enchantress is too naive. And they keep the balance of protecting nature. Enchantress travels through every forest and every climate through any season, healing and spreading positivity where she goes. She sees the smallest, most fragile creatures and helps them stay safe. Some even theorize that she is the reincarnation of the goddess Verodicea herself. But anyways, we now have a planet with early life, magically influenced by the emissions of the prison above. and the radiation of the Nemesis stones not yet landed made life on Earth flourish. From diverse fauna to primitive societies, a rich set of species and races formed, and those intelligent enough to wonder gazed up at the mad moon in curiosity. And where there is mystery and power, faith soon follows. The mad moon and the ancients quickly became deities of their own, with loyal followers on both sides. It started with Prellex, the priestess of the radiant. She started having visions of a violet sky, a sundered moon, and a voice that whispered to her, "Prepare for my arrival." Prellex and the other radiant followers started building towers and an altar in preparation. The altar very much looks like a fountain, and a very particular one if you look away from the trees that have grown around it in Dota 2. But they also built barracks to recruit new followers for an army. Because someone was not happy with the radiant way of life. That someone was Kanna, the priestess of the Dire, who is no less than Prellex's own daughter. The radiant creates, but it also enslaves. Much like our own Abrahamic religions, if Adam and Eve had just stayed in the Garden of Eden and not taken a bite from the apple to acquire freedom of will, they would have lived peacefully. Ignorance is bliss. But humanity is curious and demands freedom and rebellion. And so Kanna did what repressed teenage daughters often do. She rebelled. She bit the apple of knowledge of good and evil and chose freedom and chaos and destruction over safe enslavement. She did not actually bite an apple, but rather she is described as reborn by the Dire. She would lead the army of the opposing side against her own mother, but that is as far into the story we know. We don't know if either side won, and if so, who did. My guess is neither did, because this was at least 500 years before the story in the first Dota comic. We do know, though, that the landing of the Ancients, when the Mad Moon sundered and shattered into many fragments, was an apocalyptic event. So maybe this stopped the original feud between the priestesses? Maybe it's unknown simply because nobody who presently lives know, since it was a prehistoric event. But we do know that from the shattering of the Mad Moon, caused by the dueling Ancients within the prison slowly deteriorating it, some of the pieces of the rock landed on Earth, dire stone and radiant ore, and as the Earth recovered from the apocalypse, life boomed even brighter than before, now under even closer influence by the radiant and dire shards within the land. Okay, but if there's a bunch of shards and not a single lump that makes up the Ancients, how do you describe the Dota map? There's clearly two big buildings that are the actual consciousnesses that is the radiant and dire. Well, I have another biblical theory. Let's go back to Genesis. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. So the Garden of Eden is divided by rivers and has 2 powerful trees within it, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The latter tree is a mouthful, so let's shorten that to the tree of free will. If we look at the Ancients, you can see that the Radiant has trees growing around it, and the Dire a bunch of rocks. And while I don't think this is a literally copy of the Garden of Eden, I think it's almost certainly influenced by it. The tree of life is the radiant that creates, nurtures, keeps you safe, but also forever an ignorant pet, like Mother Prellex. The tree of free will, that bears the forbidden fruit that led to humanity's banishment, is so obviously the dire. It's the curiosity and freedom that no matter how hard an authority might try to beat down, it will always prevail, and often rather violently. You can push and push a beach ball into the pool, and you can push it quite far and for quite a long time, but the more you do it and the deeper you go, the harder it will surge back up and hit you in the face. Kanna chose the Dire's anarchy over the radiant totalitarianism. So yeah, I think the Dota map could be based on the Garden of Eden, even if very loosely. What happens when we die? That's perhaps the most important question people want answered through faith, so let's talk about the Dota 2 afterlife and underworld. When a living being dies in the Dotaverse, their name is added to the Book of the Dead. Then the soul is sent to the narrow maze to wander through a labyrinth which will determine where you end up. If you try to escape death, it's Visage, the bound form of Necrolik, who will hunt you down and bring you back. The point of the narrow maze is to sort the dead souls into the right afterlife. There's different theories about how the afterlife works after this point, but I've chosen to go with what is written in the bios and responses, and for once not read too much between the lines, and also make sense with the real-world religions. Whether someone believes in hell or the Nuthel realm, when they die, both are correct. The narrow maze will send you to the underworld which best suits your ability and faith. Since the underscape is only mentioned in Razor's lore, I think it's a blanket term for all underworlds. So the narrow maze sends you into the underscape, but how the underscape looks depends on how you did while in the labyrinth. Razor is a guardian of the narrow maze and underscape, and will not hesitate to hasten the souls wandering towards their eternal slumber by giving them a good old electrocution. But while Razor is what most people first think of when hearing about the afterlife in Dota, in my opinion, Visage gives much more evidence to what it's like. He talks about some restless soul escapes their hells and heavens, which reveals that 1. Heaven and hell are real as afterlives, and 2. That the afterlife is a subjective thing. All afterlives are real, just like every subjective interpretation of reality is real. If you believe that, when you die, you will go to hell, you will go to hell. One of the places souls go after dying is the Nuthel realm. Huskar and Dazzle's people believe in it as the afterlife and where their gods reside, and that it has a dark and light side. The living may enter it, which Dazzle and Huskar both have done, but you need to do a special ritual, and, when returning to the land of the living, you will be irrevocably changed. Only the Desert Order knows the ingredients needed for the rite, and not everyone who enters returns. Huskar and Dazzle's people believe that the Nuthel gives life, so they must return in sacrifices. Slaughtering their enemies count as sacrifices, but it is unknown whether or not their souls will necessarily go to the Nuthel, or instead just to whatever afterlife the victim believes in. Dazzle visited the Nuthel realm for enlightenment and to become a full member of the Desert Order, while Huskar actually wanted to sacrifice himself to live with the gods for eternity. But instead, Dazzle interfered, and made Huskar an immortal warrior. Okay, so I said earlier that Visage is a gold mine for lore digging, and one of the most interesting things about him is his interaction with the lion. Apparently, Visage has sent Lion to hell before, and when meeting him, is annoyed that he is back to life. This means that hell is beyond the veil, or in other words, since its inhabitants are under Visage's surveillance, it is indeed an afterlife souls go to after dying. Demons and other heroes who believe in hell also assume all their kills go to hell when they die, as do Huskar and Dazzle that their kills go to the Nuthel realm. If hell really is real, and a place where some damned souls go, does that mean there is also a heaven for those who have been good? When Terrorblade interacts with Skywrath Mage, he suspects he might be an angel. When he kills Skywrath, he says, "An angel falls," and that is only one example. Is maybe the ghastly Eerie and Skywrath people the Dotaverse's equivalent of angels in heaven? When Lucifer the Doom was banished from the realm behind the light, his wings were branded until only stumps remained. Then he fell to earth and became a demon, able to travel between all the 7 hells. And while it would be really cool if the Skywrath people were angels in the ghastly Eerie heaven, I don't think so. I think then there would be more hints towards it. So you can believe it if you want, but for me, I need more evidence. But anyways, so even if we know nothing about heaven, we do know quite a bit about hell and several demons. Let's go through all of it, starting with what we know about hell, and then the inhabitants. There is 7 hells, and they are ruled by the demon lords. We know the name of 3 locations associated with hell, but if they are the name of either of the hells, which one they are, or if they are just a location within one and not defining the entire thing, is unknown. Sir Action Sykes' loregasm about hell is really good, even if a lot of it is from speculation, so if you want more details and reading between the lines, I heavily suggest you watch it. I will just brief over the places, and then you can decide for yourself how it looks in your mind. Anyways, moving on. The 3 locations are Vashendal, which may or may not even be in hell at all, Falfell, which is the hell of hell, where demons are imprisoned, such as Terrorblade and Chaos Knight's horse, and the Abyssum, where Shadow Fiend's home is and he keeps his gathered souls. The first to fourth hells we know nothing about, but the fifth one may be where the demon smiths reside, the sixth one is where the demon Merexiform was from and killed by Clinks, and the seventh is the lowest one, where Lucifer the Doomed lives. There are quite a few characters and heroes associated with and from hell, so I will list all of them, but then only talk about the most interesting one in my opinion, who is Terrorblade. Sir Action Sax's Hell and Demon Lorgasm episode is linked in the description if you want details about all of them. They include Doom, Shadow Fiend, Shadow Demon, Queen of Pain, Terrorblade, Merexiform, Estzok, Obsidian, Warlock's Golem, Chaos Knight's Horse, and the Demons of the Cataract. Terrorblade, the Demon Marauder, is one of my favorite heroes in the entire Dotaverse. His bios contain a lot of words that us mortals maybe don't understand, which is actually pretty important to understanding his personality. A Demon Marauder means a Demon Raider. An Outlaw Hellion means an outlaw who is mischievous and often associated with children, and usually the evil type of mischief since the word derives from hell. And Cosmic Iconoclast. An iconoclast is a person who criticizes or attacks other beliefs, such as religion. This can be either through questioning or physically destroying images. So he's a mischievous demon raider who other demons fear. He stole from the demon lords and broke all the laws of the seven hells, almost certainly purposely to provoke, and ended up imprisoned in Falfell. Falfell, like I touched on, is the hell of hell, where demons imprison their own. But instead of having raging flames and physical torture, the inmates are instead sentenced to look into the darkest parts of their own souls. This was meant to drive him mad, but instead he conquered his demons and took control of his reflection. He used this new immensely powerful inner beast to escape the prison, and was free to torment anyone who he might stumble upon. Unless it's a dragon, because he seems to like dragons. Oh, an enchantress, for some reason. He calls her his best friend, but at least to my knowledge, we have no other information about their relationship, other than this one-sided voice line. I think the point Terrorblade is trying to make is that there's nothing wrong with trolling demons. He will criticize and refuse to obey those who he deems impure of heart, but he will never hurt those who are genuinely kind. That's why he wasn't disgusted by his inner self, but instead got empowered by it. He wasn't hiding some inner shame or bitterness. He stayed true to his cause, motivations, and honor, if you can even call it that. And everything he does, he fully believes is the right thing. If there was even a shred of doubt, he would have gone mad at the monster in the mirror. He's just him to the max like Pepsi, even if that means he's a piece of shit. At least he doesn't pretend to be better than he is. Okay, so that's the basics of hell and what happens when someone dies in the Dotaverse. But what happens when what's dead won't die? There is an ominous presence that for hundreds of years, if not since the dawn of the first day, has plagued some of the living. He is called the Dead God, and with the power of the dirge, a hypnotic song, he converts the living and rises the dead to do his bidding. Saying they worship him is not entirely accurate, as they don't really have a choice, and are more his puppets, but regardless, he controls endless armies of dead soldiers. But other than his followers not really consenting to their commitment, there's one other thing that's a bit off. The Dead God doesn't convert just anyone. If he did as many as he could, the entire Dota world would be consumed by now. The dirge song, and the god himself, has the power of poisonous nihilism, toxic darkness, and fatalism. Is the dirge, and the force that rises the dead, just the thought that life is meaningless? And then, ironically, that turns you into a literal zombie, not dead neither alive? I don't know. But the Dead God, if a god at all, is one of my favorite characters in the Dota universe, and I could probably make an entire video only about him and his philosophy. But we have to move on. We have now arrived at the present. In the multiverse of Dota, there's a bunch of events being played out simultaneously in Artifact. Some after one another in the same timeline, others as two parallel outcomes. Much like in our world, the Dota world doesn't just have one monotheistic god that's interpreted in different ways into different religions. There's pantheons of a bunch of gods that have powers specific to natural or cultural phenomena like the moon, sea, or war. Some of them I have talked about in regards to how the planet was formed, but here's all the deities currently worshipped. The dead god and his influence, which I talked about before, is the mortal enemy of the rumusque faith. The rumusque faith has been around for centuries, but it is unknown what exactly they believe in. Necrophos, who was previously a cardinal in the religion, references biblical verses, and there's many other details that makes it extremely similar to Catholic Christianity. Necrophos was the scamming cardinal of the rumusque, taking advantage of a plague, perhaps conjured by himself, slowly killing most of the rumusque while taking a lot of money for healing the last few survivors. As punishment, he was sent to the plague ward, where he was supposed to die a long painful death to illness, but he turned out to be immune, and instead it made him the powerful Pope of Pestilence. The Cathedral of rumusque is where the worshippers reside. They have a lot in common with both Omni-Night and Chen's gods, and are perhaps the same. We know that they purged the fields of endless carnage, where corpses don't decompose. The Pangolier has described the purge as dark, so maybe the fields of endless carnage weren't evil at all. In Artifact, we have a few sources that also supports this, that they were in fact peaceful people, even civilized. The clerics and warrior priests, as we know, purged them still though, and were led by Lady Ashnu. Lady Ashnu is also not a fan of Necrophos, as Pudge hints to when he tells Necro that maybe if he gave Lady Ashnu his head, she would stop harassing Pudge's undead friends. By the way, in Artifact, Chen is seeking out the rumusque, and specifically Lady Ashnu, and he wants to do it to convert them to the Holy Knights of the Fold. But he also mentions that Lady Ashnu might be the second coming of Krella. Krella was an extremely powerful priestess from the Cathedral of the rumusque a long time ago. She formed the Chains of Obsession from Pudge's Dota 2 Arcana cosmetic. The chains were meant to bind the servants of the dead god, but over time they became corrupted by the Dirge instead, and took a mind of their own, and destroyed her homeland. But anyways, the rumusque is basically Catholic Christianity, and perhaps one of the three interpretations of the same god, like in our world's Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Chen and the Knights of the Fold worships Obelisk, who they consider the one true god, which they violently force victims to convert to. That, and the fact that he knows Krella and wants to convert rumusque faithful specifically to the Knights of the Fold, makes me suspect that they actually worship the same deity. But what deity is that? There is one more religion and god who I have talked about, which also practices the violent obsession of monotheism. The Omniscience, the all-seeing one. Omniscience means the state of knowing everything, and is often associated specifically with monotheistic gods. The Omniscience faith has scripture, and members go on bloody crusades. Pyrrhus Thunderwrath, the Omni-Knight, is one such crusader. But seeing his associates die around him over a very long period of time wore down his faith, and he started questioning it. His doubt was quickly erased though, when he actually got to meet the all-seeing one, and his faith grew stronger than ever. Another hero that confirms the Omniscience is real is Zeus, who claims to know him. But even if he is real, some suspect his powers aren't. Other characters who may or may not be a god like they claim is the Dotaverse's Greco-Roman pantheon. To our knowledge, it includes all the gods such as Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, and Ares, who renamed himself Mars to rebel against his father and wants to start a new pantheon. There's also other ancient Greek characters like the Gorgons, and Ogre Magi's goddess of luck, who might be Tyche. The Aegis is also a reference to Greek antique faith. Some people think that maybe they aren't divine at all, and are just powerful wizards. But with the addition of Mars, I think it's pretty safe to say that they are gods. Gods that, unlike the Omniscience, Knights of the Fold, and rumusque, don't mind the existence of other gods. They are happy as long as they receive the worship and see other gods as competitors rather than false gods. Hey, there might even be a Hades for the specific Dotaverse's inhabitants that believe in Greek myth, where they go when they die. There's also two references to Norse myth, Thor and the dwarves Brok and Eitri from Mjolnir, and Skadi from Eye of Skadi. But other than that, it seems like they abandoned Norse myth entirely. Silhamene is the goddess of the moon and also of magic, according to Artifact. Her name is likely based on Selene, the Greek goddess of the moon. The Night Silver Woods is where the temple of Silhamene and Shrine of Mene is located. On the night of each new moon, the followers burn offerings for their goddess at the temple. Her two most notable followers are Luna and Marana. Luna is also in the Dark Moon Order, a sect of warriors that fight for Silhamene. Like the Omniscience and Greco-Roman pantheon, Silhamene is very real, and in Artifact, we have even seen her come to Earth physically. And the last, maybe Greek-inspired deity, but not really, I think this one is independent, but it has a Greek goddess name, is Nyx. Nyx, in Greek myth, is the goddess of the night though, and is very different from Dota Nyx. Contrary to common belief, Nyx is not the name of the Dota hero, it's the name of the goddess he serves. But is she really a goddess, or is she just a queen mother, ruling her hive like a theocracy? If she is the all-powerful queen of a hive that only knows her leadership and nurture, would they even question her divinity? I think she's just a hive queen that got so powerful to the point where even she believes she's a goddess. But if people have faith, then who's to say she isn't? But anyways, she's the queen goddess of the zealot scarabs, some of whom turn into Nyx assassins, killing in her service. The Flayed Twins are two gods worshipped as one by the people of the Xacatucatl Mountains. They need insane amounts of blood sacrificed to them to live, although they can't be destroyed. But stopping the blood sacrifices won't kill them, because first they would drain the entire mountain for all the blood of its inhabitants. To satisfy their thirst without having to give up the lives of their people, the priests of Xacatucatl sends out bloodseekers like Stigwer the Bloodseeker with special weapons and armor that sends the blood from his battles directly to the Flayed Twins. The Flayed Twins are likely based on Xipe Totek, the Aztec god of way too many things. He was also known as the Flayed One. The Celestials might be an Asian-inspired pantheon. It has the Japanese god of thunder, Raijin, Kaolin is sometimes called China Clay, and Xin is the name of at least two historical Chinese generals I could find: Storm, Earth, and Fire. But are they gods? Do they have worshippers? Or are they just very powerful characters? A god gets its power and existence through people believing in them, and in my mind are even more real if they don't actually exist. If it's an actual living thing that walks among us, then is it really a god? Or is it just a powerful being? Mystery leads to obsession, which you see in most popular gods and also cult leaders and celebrities. So I don't know. I've decided not to talk much about the Celestials for this reason. Okay, so that's it for the most important gods and goddesses in the Dotaverse. But just so my weird brain can get some rest, here's all the ones I haven't mentioned because they're too small and insignificant and probably only mentioned once. Medusa's mother was a sea goddess. Morphling worships the god Polymorphia. Venomancer once killed some worshippers of the god Aktok. Niktasha is a goddess whose midnight terrors created Bane. Bane is part of the three shades who may or may not be deities. Bane is associated with terror, and Belladonna and Tyrion, the other two, are associated with madness and death. Darkseer worships the god king Demethrix. Juggernaut's people worship the Faceless Ones and the Maker of Masks. The Dark Ones may be gods, and if they are worshipped by Slark. The Solar Goddess is worshipped by people from the desert land, the Skilliant Waste, and is associated with Lena, and maybe Marana and Sand King. Class is a deity from the Classerain realm, worshipped by Faceless Void. Skriak is the goddess of the Skyreth people. She turned Shandalzer into a vengeful spirit, so she could get revenge on the ones who betrayed her. You queue up for a game of Dota 2. You endure a raging, feeding mid laner, a CS-stealing support, an orchestra of pings, and your own frustrating mistakes. But eventually, you farm your way up to the point where you 1v9, destroy the enemy ancient, and win. The game ends. But what actually happened? What happens when one ancient is destroyed? If we have already seen the end of the conflict between the Radiant and Dire, how come Dota isn't an RPG that you can complete? Well, that's because you never really win. Or rather, every time someone wins and every time someone loses, all of it is real and all of it has happened, and all of the times it's the last bus stop on the route that is the Dota history. Because when one ancient is destroyed, the timeline resets, and the endless battle continues. If you're as imaginative as me, you might even suggest there's a biblical allegory here too, or maybe you prefer the Norse mythological Ragnarok, the prophesied doomsday of 2012. Regardless, we know it's coming, and we know fighting only repeats the problem. The wars will never stop unless we learn from history. The dire and the radiant are imagined enemies. They are opposite authorities in this world, swaying people to either side by labeling us and them. And we fall for it every damn time.
That I could turn back time, 'cause now the guilt is all mine. Can't live without the trust from those you love. I know we can't forget the past. You can't forget love and pride. Because of that, it's killing me inside. Could never love again. I've lost everything, everything, everything that matters to me matters in this world. I wish that I could turn back time, 'cause now the guilt is all mine. Can't live without the trust from those you love.